Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
For centuries, ancient cultures knew the secrets to longevity, vitality, and healing. Now, modern science is catching up. Ageless Blueprint is a podcast that will reveal the modern secrets of better health and a better life. Join Dr. Eldred Taylor here today and every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. As together we discover the secrets to better health through science and spirituality. A better life with Ageless Blueprint starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
My life changed when I stopped living in fear and lived in love. I was fearful of everything. I was taught to be fearful of dogs, fearful of water, fearful of confrontation, fearful of leaving my office for more than a few days at a time, fearful. We're all living in fear. We fear climate change. We fear Alzheimer's. We fear death. We fear war. We fear other religions. We fear other people who don't think like us. We fear other people who don't look like us. We are constantly in a state of fear. My life changed when I stopped living in fear and lived in love. I was fearful of everything. I was taught to be fearful of dogs, fearful of water, fearful of confrontation, fearful of leaving my office. Don't know if we're having some technical difficulties.
Was that from
Hello?
Corinthians? Was that from Corinthians that you just read, the fear?
Oh, I didn't hear it. Was it on?
Yes.
I don't know why I didn't hear it. I I'm sorry. Yeah, so I didn't hear it at all. But yeah, the reason why I started with that. And so hello, I'm Dr. Taylor. Again, this is our first live broadcast, so we may have some technical difficulties. I may make some mistakes, but uh, I'm Dr. Taylor, and I'm the host and creator of Ageless Blueprint. And the reason why I wanted you to hear that First Corinthians 13th chapter is because that scripture my father read every Sunday, and he talked about love, and he talked about putting away childish things and becoming a man and seeing things clearly. And I didn't know it then, but that has kind of shaped my life. And I live by faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And that First Corinthians 13th chapter, it taught me about God because God is love. And so that's how I see God, is through love. And I don't want to be a clanging cymbal. I don't want to be like everybody else who's on podcast and on YouTube. I want to come from a focus of love. And as a physician, I feel like a lot of times we create fear, we create fear in our patients. And the opposite of love is fear. And love is regenerating, it's rejuvenating, it empowers you. And fear suppresses you, it keeps you locked up, it keeps you afraid, and it keeps you in constant stress. And so everybody is fearful, nowadays. People are fearful of the government, they're fearful of their environment, they're fearful of war. And the news, that's all it talks about, is fear, fear, fear. And when you're in a state of fear, that causes stress, and stress will kill you. And so I don't ever want to come from a position of fear. I'm always going to come from a position of love, and I want everyone to know that. So let's get started, Rebel. Uh, First thing we want to talk about is my story, because no one has lived my life, no one has had the experiences that I've had, and no one has the desire to let you learn from my experiences. So I think first, we both need to get comfortable with each other. I need to get comfortable with this platform. I have been on another platform called Ask the Experts, and that's what got me here. I did that for about 3 years, and hopefully you've seen some of those, and I'll have some of those on my webpage, so you can look at those. But for about 3 years, I would come on once a week, I mean once a month, and we would talk about different topics. And that show became popular, and the creator of that show asked me if I wanted to do a podcast of my own. And I just said, sure. But I didn't really know what I was getting into because it takes a lot to try and come up with a format and a purpose and what to expect on a podcast. So I said yes, and this was back in December, and I'll tell you how I got to that point. But since then, I've been talking about this. I've been trying to make sure I had what I needed to get across the points I wanted to get across. And so here we are. So anyway, the reason why I started with that First Corinthians is because I was born in a home that my father was a Baptist minister, and I was the sixth child of six, and I'm the youngest. And so, one thing we're gonna talk about in some future podcasts is that the first 7 years of your life, you're really living in a brainwave state called theta. And it's the same brain waves that they use to hypnotize people. So for the first 7 years of your life, you're really hypnotized. You have these neurons in your brain called mirror neurons, and whatever you see, your brain creates that for you. And I know that gets a little deep, and as you continue to follow me on this podcast, you'll understand that more. But you're hypnotized. I didn't know it at that time, but you're hypnotized. So whatever you see, that's what you think life is. So my life unconsciously, I saw going to church and doing what my parents did, and thankfully, my parents, they were loving, they were kind, they did anything for us. So I learned unconditional love by being hypnotized my first 7 years of my life. And I also saw that my parents didn't really worry about a lot of things. Things just worked out. So that's kind of how I lived my life. And that was very helpful to me. Okay. But you need to realize that a lot of the unconscious things that you do, it really comes from being hypnotized your first 7 years. So if you see a lot of chaos your first 7 years, you don't even remember it, but a lot of times your mind is chaotic and you actually create the things that you saw in your childhood. So that's why, Freud and all of these people are trying to get you to look at things in your childhood. And most of those things lie in your subconscious or your unconscious mind. So if you're thinking, hey, why do these things happen to me? It's all about getting in touch with your unconscious thoughts so that you can see them and then you can try and change them, because a lot of times we think we're just the way we are because that's just how God made us. Well, that's not true. You really come in with a blank slate, and the first 7 years of your life, your subconscious mind kind of gets imprinted with a blueprint. And and I'll tell you, when I came up with the name Ageless Blueprint, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. But that blueprint, you have a blueprint that's imprinted upon you as a child. So that was my blueprint. So I went to school, and my dad, he encouraged me. He said, "Hey, if anybody can make an A in a class, you can make an A. And if the teacher doesn't give out an A, I don't expect you to make an A." So he gave me high realistic expectations. And so that allowed me to go to Vanderbilt undergrad, and I studied molecular biology there. And then I went to medical school at Emory, and I went through there, and then I did a residency in OBGYN. So that's where, I started out with this blueprint of spirituality, but then I got interested in science. And I'll tell you the reason why I got interested in science. I had to have a surgery when I was 12 years old, and I still remember his name. His name was Dr. Boyd, And he was so nice to me, and he made me feel so comfortable, and the surgery went well. And I said, okay, I want to be a doctor. And from that point on, I followed the blueprint for being a doctor. You had to make good grades. You had to uh, take certain subjects in school, and you had to do well there. And then you had to try to go to medical school. So I followed a blueprint. Okay. So then I became a doctor. And then what's the blueprint after that? All my brothers and sisters had gotten married right after school. So unconsciously, I found my wife, and right after medical school, we got married. And I'll tell you a little secret. I had said this secret when I was on the other show, the Ask the Experts. I met my wife at a Christmas party that we had that the medical school had, and uh, we really didn't start dating till that April, and we dated, and then by Thanksgiving uh, of that same year, I took her back to Nashville, where I'm from, and I wanted her to meet my parents. And we kind of told a little bit of a lie to say that we had been dating for a year, and we really only been dating for 4 or 5 months. And then by Christmas of that time of that same year, we got engaged, and that June we were married. And this is 38 years, it'll be 39 years this year, 39 years later. So it wasn't that bad of a decision. It was really a great decision, probably one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. It probably is the best decision that I made in my life, is getting a partner who you can grow with. And that's what we did. We went through our residencies together. She went through a residency of family practice and psychiatry, and I did an OBGYN residency. So I got to deliver babies. I learned how to take care of women. I thought I knew how to take care of women appropriately. Learned how to do C-sections and all of these different procedures. And we started a practice. She started her own practice. I started a practice with another OBGYN, and we practiced medicine, and we did it like everybody else. We did it like we were taught. We did it the old-fashioned way. And through that time, we had two children. They are 5 years apart. And about that time, after we had our second child, uh, things started to change. My wife, a lot of times after a pregnancy, uh, women change, their hormones change. And I didn't really understand that at that time. Uh, but she was having hormonal issues. So I started to tell her to do what I've been taught to do, which was birth control pills, and all of the things and that's really it. I tell people I have a lecture called honorary gynecologist, and anybody who's young, if they come into an OBGYN, they're going to get birth control pills. It doesn't matter what they complain of, they're going to get birth control pills. If you're older, you're going to get Premarin or Provera, and so no Premarin now. Now people are getting estrogen and testosterone pellets, which I'll get to. It doesn't make any sense. Uh, but the problem is they're not measuring what they're trying to alter. So anyway, my wife started having these problems, and the things that I was taught to do wasn't working in her. She wasn't getting better. She was getting worse or staying the same. Well, I had a patient come in, and I call her the unknown patient, but this patient changed my life. She came in and asked me about bioidentical or natural hormones. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, because we didn't learn that at Emory. That's the medical school I went to here in Atlanta. And I said, it must not be important in my mind. I said, it must not be important because I didn't learn it. So she gave me a cassette tape. And because I was high and mighty and thought I knew everything, I didn't listen to the tape, but my wife did. It was in the car. And to tell you how long ago it was a cassette tape. So she listened to the tape, and she said, I think this guy's talking about me. And he was talking about all of the issues women have, PMS, perimenopause, and how it was really about measuring and balancing hormones. And the two hormones were estrogen and progesterone. And everybody's heard of estrogen, but nobody really knows anything about progesterone. And everybody knows about testosterone, because you see all the commercials about men and testosterone. Well, anyway, he also said that, hey, the only way you can balance something is to measure it. You know, if you want to balance something, you have to put it on a scale and you have to balance it. And so I was never taught to measure hormones. Now, how can you go through a 4-year residency in OBGYN and we never drew blood or anything to measure hormones? But when you're a resident, it's another blueprint and another hypnosis. When you're a resident, you're not taught to ask questions. You're taught to see one, do one, teach one. Okay, so you don't ask any questions. You see what's done, you do it, and then you teach the other person to do it, which is a crazy way to do something, to not question yourself. You always should question yourself. And I talk about being in a caterpillar line, and I have a video about that, about when that see one, do one, teach one. That doesn't give you the opportunity to change. So that's why medicine doesn't change, because it goes by that see one, do one, teach one. So anyway, why don't you measure hormones? Why are you just giving birth control pills? Why are you just giving, this? And so he talked about saliva testing. And in upcoming episodes, I'm going to talk a lot about saliva testing because that's how you balance. Okay. You have to measure it, then you can balance it. And then once you can balance it, then you become in harmony. And then that gives you a peaceful mind and body. And that's what this whole thing is about. And that's what we're going to talk about, this ageless blueprint. The blueprint is you have to try and achieve balance. You have to get in harmony, and that gives you peace. And if you see on my banner that comes up, that guy on the right, that's somebody I met in Petra. And I'll tell you how I got to Petra. That's another story. But this guy he lives in the caves in Petra in Jordan, and his family's lived there for 500 years, and they are totally content because they are in balance and harmony with nature, and that guy is in perfect peace. We talked to him for 2 hours, and I tell you, he's the most interesting man in the world, and he lives in caves, and his family has lived there. So he doesn't have Instagram, he doesn't have CNN or Fox News, he doesn't have YouTube, he doesn't have any of that, but he's probably I envy him how he can live with what we call nothing and have everything. And that's, the paradoxical things about life. We keep trying to get more and more and more, thinking that that's going to provide us what we need. And what we really need is peace and harmony. And every cell in your body has to be in harmony for you to have a long lasting, fulfilling life. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So anyway, so we balanced our hormones, we measured our hormones and we balanced them. And all of a sudden my wife was normal again. So I did that again with some of my employees in my practice, and it worked for them too. And so I took this book called The Magic of Progesterone by John Lee. I want to give everybody who has helped me along the way credit. And I read that book and I got the references from that book. This was before Google Scholar. This was 25. We wrote the book, Are Your Hormones Making You Sick? 25 years ago. It was published in 2000 for the first time. So I got all the references, I read them all, and then I went back to the physiology book just to look at how does the body actually work. Because in medical school, you're primarily taught pharmacology. You're taught how drugs work. And you're told to forget the first 2 years of medical school where you looked at physiology and biochemistry and physics and all of these other different sciences, and then you're only taught about drugs. So I went back to the physiology book, and the physiology book clearly explained how estrogen makes things grow, progesterone makes things stop growing and develop fully. And that's why when this is out of balance, because estrogen is making things grow and you don't have enough progesterone to control that growth and make it develop normally, uncontrolled, undeveloped growth is the definition of cancer. So that's why when hormones are out of balance like that, you can get growth of fibroids, you can get growth of fibrocystic breast in women, you can get growth of breast cancers. So you always want to make sure that there is a balance. And I was taught that all women were low in estrogen. And we gave everybody estrogen. I was taught to give everybody estrogen when they were menopausal. And then the Women's Health Initiative came out and said, no, 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 that's not the way to do it. And the reason why we made the mistake, because we tried to balance something without measuring it. So anyway, so saliva testing. And I'm gonna have a YouTube video. Did you know that spitting can change your life? Because spitting or saliva changed my life. It took me in a whole different direction. And what it did was it taught me that I didn't learn everything I needed to know in medical school. So if I didn't learn what I should have learned about the residency that I studied in for 4 years, then what else didn't I learn? That made me, so let me go back. So then we wrote the book called Are Your Hormones Making You Sick? And we were measuring and balancing estrogen and progesterone. And with that book, I began to speak. And I have my first lecture that I did out of the country to make me an international speaker. I have it on my school group that you see down, that's scrolling down there. And I started speaking and I became popular speaking. So I went around to these conferences and was talking about balancing estrogen and progesterone. And then while I was at those conferences, I was hearing speakers talking about stress and how important stress was. And I found a study that said 75 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians are for stress related complaints or disorders. And I'm like, wow, if 75 to 90% of my patients have stress related complaints or disorders, if I focus on stress, I'm going to be right 75 to 90% of the time. And I'm going to tell you that was 25 years ago. I'm going to tell you now that stress is probably the culprit for 99% of all visits to primary care physicians. So I wanted to become a stress expert. And also, I talk about measuring. So, how do you measure stress? Well, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. So people say you need to manage your stress better, manage your stress better. Well, I can't manage it if I can't measure it. I found out you can measure stress one way in saliva. You can look at cortisol levels. Now, cortisol should be high in the morning and should be low at night. Cortisol mobilizes glucose so you have a steady flow of energy during the day. Now, what happens is that when you are overly stressed, you need more glucose so that you can have more energy. And so your body doesn't know whether you're stressed out about a test or whether you're stressed out because a tiger is chasing you. It just sees stress as stress. So it pours out adrenaline and cortisol. And so now you have all this extra glucose. What are you going to do with it? Well, what happens is that extra glucose, if you're not using it to run a fight, it can cause you to store fat. Now, let's go back to this cortisol curve that you can see in saliva, and I'm going to show you some examples in some YouTube videos and some other podcasts. So first, it goes up high so that you can get away from the tiger. You can, get away. So you have a lot of glucose rolling. You can only do that for so long because your stress response is supposed to be for an acute danger. But we're not stressed for 10 or 15 minutes. We're stressed for 10 or 15 years. And your adrenal gland can't keep that up. It can't keep that up that high. So what happens is instead of it having a high low like this, it just goes like this, midway, stays midway the whole time. What happens there is that in the morning, you don't have the energy you need because it should be up here and it's down here. At night, it should be way down here and it's up here. So you're tired all day, but you can't go to sleep at night. And if you can't sleep, you're not going to get better. I don't care what I do or anybody does. If you can't sleep, you're not going to get better. So if you don't change that pattern, you're going to get worse and worse and worse. We call that adrenal fatigue. So we wrote a book called The Stress Connection, and it's explaining what I just explained. Now, there's other ways you can measure stress, and we're going to talk about that. You can measure it through heart rate variability. You can measure it through heart math, synchronizing your heart and your brain. Uh, Here's my biggest problem. I have so much I want to say. I have so much I want to teach. I just got to slow down and try and make sure that I do it in a logical fashion. So anyway, we wrote the book called The Stress Connection. And I went around speaking about both of those. All right. And we had seminars, we had all these things. And one day I was supposed to speak in Las Vegas. I was in my office all day. I caught a flight out there, and the next morning, I always was a 7:30, 8 o'clock speaker. And I got up, slides went up, and it was like somebody had changed the slides on me. I couldn't think, I couldn't go, and I had done that lecture 1,000 times. And what happened was I had adrenal fatigue. uh, some of the people who saw me speak thought they knew something was wrong with me. I really had to stop midway and just say, I don't know what's wrong, but I can't carry on. So I've lived through, I've lived through with my wife with hormones, with me burnout, and I did my cortisol curve, and it was flatline. And I'm gonna tell you, it took me 6 months to recover. And some of the patients I saw back then, I'm going to tell you, they would talk to me and I could not comprehend what they were saying. And I don't think I heard anybody or whatever, but that's how I felt. So anyway, I took some time off and we decided that we were going to start something where I could uh, do this here. So we started something called the American Functional Medicine Association. My wife really spearheaded that for me. And uh, and we started having conferences here, and we would invite guests and so on, and it took us a year to have this once a year seminar. And in 2016, my sister passed away from cancer, and she had been fighting this for, it was the youngest sister right next to me. She had been fighting this for 5 or 6 years, and I kind of saw how conventional medicine it caused her to deteriorate, and I think it was prematurely. And so I really got interested in how I could give cancer patients a different outcome. And so that got me interested in that. So anyway, where was we were talking about I was burnt out. And the other thing I want to tell you that happened, and you'll hear, I think this commercial is coming up, Rebel, is that we started something called Taylor MD Formulations. And when I was out speaking, what would happen is I started speaking for these supplement companies. And the supplement companies wanted me to try their supplements, of course. So I would try them and they'd have, ashwagandha, B12, they'd have all these single products. And so for my patients to get a benefit, they had to get five, six, seven different supplements. Now that works great for the supplement company, but it it's impossible. I can't take 8 pills on a consistent basis. And it was hard for my patients to do it. So my wife said, "Hey," we started reading. Said, "Hey, if you get smaller quantities of um, herbs and supplements, they work together in synergy, and the result is greater than the sum of the parts." So all we have is these combination products, and we try to help people feel better or create or correct cortisol curves or whatever. Uh, we like for them to do it and only have to take 1 or 2 pills. And we've had this company for over, it's been about 15 years now. And we've used it in our practice and they work. People can take 1, 2, maybe 3 products and they feel better. And eventually, they can take them less. So that's our concept. That's how we've uh how we've developed our practice. And so we did that. And when my sister passed away, that was it. I was like, we can't keep doing these American Functional Medicine programs. And then in 2020, COVID hit, so everything you know, kind of stopped. And so I think Rebel, I know we have a commercial talking about about the supplement company. You want to play that now? Because now I want to get to the second half of my life, what I'm going through now. So that's my past. And now I want to invite you to come with me on this ageless blueprint to figure out how we can live a long, healthy, vital life. Because I'll tell you what I saw myself, I'm going to turn 65 this year. And I didn't want to see myself like my parents, the last 10, 15 years of their life, it went down. both of them. I didn't want that. So I'm on this search of how can I ascend and not descend in my quote unquote golden years. I
That
said,
sounds great.
yeah. So let's hear the commercial. Is it time for that?
Yes. Let's do the
Okay.
commercial, and then when we come
Hmm.
back, before you
Hmm.
get to the next part, let's cover some questions that we got in.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get to
Okay, great.
commercial break, and we'll be right back.
All right, great.
We are going to a quick break, so stay with us as we explore the Ageless Blueprint right here on W4HC Radio and Talk 4 TV. An ancient secret with a modern twist for better health and vitality. Dr. Taylor will be right back. Taking care of your health shouldn't mean taking a handful of pills every day. At Taylor MD Formulations, they create doctor-developed supplements that combine the best natural ingredients so you get the results you need with fewer pills. Taylor MD Formulations is backed by science, designed for real life with real results. Less pills, better health, doctor approved. Shop now at TaylorMDFormulations.com and discover smarter supplements for smarter health. That's TaylorMDFormulations.com. We are back for more of Ageless Blueprint. Once again, let's join Dr. Taylor for more insights and research on the ancient secret to better health and a better life in modern times. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
All right,
All right.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, were you able to
Okay,
hear
so
that
we have some
commercial?
questions.
Yes,
Yeah,
we do.
yeah, I heard the commercial. Yeah, it's great. It makes me want to go buy some.
Absolutely. I can honestly say I love Taylor Medical. I don't promote doctors normally, but I promote Dr. Taylor because I believe in him. All right,
Yeah.
so first question that came in today.
Hmm.
How do we change the things we learned the first 7 years as we go along?
Hey, I'm just learning that, and that's what I want to teach you guys is that, we wrote a book called The Stress Connection. And the next book I think I want to write is called The Stress Disconnection. And the way you disconnect from that blueprint is through meditation. And one of my regrets in medicine is that I didn't understand the importance of meditation. Because the only way you can change those unconscious thoughts is you have to quiet that voice in your head that's chattering at you 24, almost 24/7. By meditating, you quiet your mind. You go from these, and I don't want to get too scientific, but your brain makes these beta waves when you're in fear, and it just makes you have all of these scattered thoughts. So they call it ADHD, but really it's just you have all these scattered thoughts. And that makes you anxious and nervous because you don't know what to focus on. So if you can quiet your mind through meditation, and meditation is really about being in this present moment, not worrying about what's going to happen and not reminiscing or thinking about what's in the past. So staying right here in this present moment. And that's when you can calm beta waves down into alpha waves. And alpha waves are more organized. And that is where you can start to create a new thought and a new way of living to get over that program. You got to calm down the mind. And when you calm it down enough, you enter that theta, that hypnotic state, and that's where you can imprint new thoughts. So if you were hypnotized that somebody told you you're never going to amount to anything, or you really had poor self-esteem, when you're in that theta state, you can start feeding yourself these affirmations that say, no, I am worthy, that I am good enough, that you can start to imprint a new pattern in your life. And that's what I really want to focus on. And that's what I've been learning these last 6 months is how do you change that program? And I'm going to tell you, I had to change my idea about religion and spirituality. I had to change my idea about what health and what medicine is really about. I had to change the way that I thought about eating and nutrition. And I had to changed the way I thought about my fears. And I'm going to tell you, you have been programmed to have fears. I was programmed to fear water. I was programmed because my mother was afraid of water. I was programmed to fear dogs, and now I have dogs. I had to get over that fear. Now, let me tell you what changed my life in getting over a fear is that to get over that fear of water, I went and took a scuba diving lesson. And my wife and my daughter, they're like, "Dad, don't do it, don't do it. You know, you're scared of water." I did that scuba diving lesson and I got finished with that lesson and I felt like I had reborn. Yeah, that's me. Thank you. I got that. So I felt like I had been reborn. And when you get over that one main fear, you can almost get over anything. And I'm going to tell you, the number one fear people have to get over is the fear of death. And that's where I changed my idea about religion because I think religion, and this is going to be somewhat controversial, is that sometimes religion makes you afraid to live and scared to die because you're always wondering if you're good enough to get to heaven. And religion and spirituality are different. And so that's that difference I had to make. So anyway, so let me tell you, at 65, turning 65, I said, "Hey, look, how can I change who I am?" Because me and my wife, we were, at least I was in a lull, and my wife always pushes me. She pushes me to be the best that I can be, and sometimes, I get mad at her for pushing me, but then I look back and I say she's right. So we said we need to change. So somehow, some way, I went on YouTube and saw this thing called Reality Creator and it's a little 26-year-old guy named Quasi, and he was talking about identity shifting. Is that you have to shift your identity. You have to be who you want to be. You don't think your way into it. You just have to be it. You have to do the things that you want to become. Just do it. And it's kind of like Nike. So I said that and he said you have to be clear about what you want. And I said I wanted to be a better husband. I wanted to be a better father. I wanted to be fearless. I wanted to have new experiences. And I kept thinking that I went through that course, and it changed me. It changed me, and that's why you see all that information about Egypt that I have. So it gave me the ability to get over my fear of leaving my office for 3 weeks. I was afraid to leave my office because I thought I wasn't going to make any money or whatever, and my wife wanted to go to Egypt. I got interested in spirituality and how the ancient Egyptians, they looked at spirituality as a science. They thought that science was seen spirituality and spirituality was unseen science. So being a scientist and growing up in a spiritual background, I'm like, I got to go to Egypt. So we went to Egypt and that changed our lives. And that made me come back and understand that the ancient Egyptians, those hieroglyphics that you saw, they were trying to give us a blueprint for life. That's just not art. Those are messages, those are symbols. And when they discovered the Rosetta Stone, they learned what those symbols mean. And so I got really interested in ancient philosophy and ancient spirituality. And that's another ageless blueprint. 10,000, 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, they were trying to give us a blueprint of how to live a long lasting, eternal life. And it's all about balance and harmony, giving you peace. And when you're at peace, you can figure out what your purpose is. And when you are living in your purpose, you are wanting to live longer and with vitality. Who wants to live miserable? I see people in their 60s and they're miserable. My mother and father, they were back and forth from the hospital. I'm not on any medications. I take some supplements, but I'm not taking eight or nine of them. So it was a blueprint. I got in balance and I'm trying to get in harmony and I'm trying to continue to be in harmony. And what I'm going to teach you is that everything vibrates. And when it vibrates in harmony, everything works great. When it's out of harmony, it's just like if you listen to a band and one person hits a bad note, it throws the whole harmony off. So That's how, let's go back to the question. That is how you change your blueprint. You have to get over your fears. You have to calm your mind down. You have to be aware of those unconscious thoughts. You have to be clear of how you want to change those thoughts, and then you have to feed that into your mind. And again, I have so much to share with you, all the things that I've learned that has changed my life. And just to there's a difference between getting information and getting information and incorporating it and experiencing it. Then that gives you wisdom. So you want to take this knowledge, you want it to transform your life, and that gives you wisdom so that you can continue to live. Hey, Rebel, can you show the kind of transition that I've been through? You can see it in pictures. Uh, do you have that series of pictures?
I do. They're not in order, so we'll try to make sense of this. You talked about the
Yeah,
scuba diving.
yeah. Show the one where I look old, the one with the blue shirt on.
Okay, because you don't look old, Dr. Taylor. But
Yeah, well,
okay,
I look
I see a
older.
difference.
Yeah, yeah. I was with my childhood friend. This was 2 years ago. I didn't want to put him in there because I hadn't gotten permission. But that's me, and I didn't like the way that guy looked. So I went to the scuba diving, and then you can show some more. So I did that. That got me over my fear, and then we went to Egypt. So let's see the next one. That that is Thanksgiving of last year. I took that course in October, and we saw some guys on the beach, and they had these clothes, and I bought these clothes. He said, "Yeah, put them on. It'll make you feel different." And so this was taken last week. We were no 2 weeks ago. We were in Cancun, me and my wife, and I'm telling you, I'm a new person. You know why? Because I followed that ageless blueprint. I changed my subconscious mind. I stopped thinking that I'm going to get older. I'm going to be in the assisted living. I'm going to live life to the fullest. And I'm not going to be scared to live. Okay, you can take that.
But tell us about these clothes. You stopped at the clothes. Tell us
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this.
okay. So it was some people on the beach and they were modeling these clothes. And these were young people. These were like 30-year-olds and they look like models. And I was like, man, you guys look, my wife called them and said, oh man, you look great. And they said, "Yeah, we got these clothes, you can buy them." And so my wife and my daughter, she was there, it's like, "Oh, Dad, put these on." So I put them on, and it was like, it made it made you feel different. And I want to tell you, life is about feelings, okay? It's about thoughts, it's about actions, and it's about feelings. And that's what you have to change. You have to change your feelings about yourself. So when I put on those clothes, it changed me. And your feelings will change your body. Okay. When you're happy, you look happy, you walk happy, you have a skip in your step. When you're sad, you walk slowly, your head is down. So how you feel is expressed in your body. And if you feel worthless subconsciously, it's going to show in your body and in your thoughts and in your actions. If you feel like you're broken, like you're there's something wrong with you, it's going to show up in your body, and not only externally, it'll show up internally. And that's why a lot of people fit into that 75 to 90% of the people who come in with a stress related complaint or disorder, because your feelings, your mind shows up in your body. And I can tell you, let me tell you about one case. I have a patient who has ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease.
That's a
She's,
hard one, folks. If y'all don't know,
yeah,
that one,
yeah,
you'll wind up losing all control of everything, and your mind is fine, but you
yeah,
lose your body.
yeah,
It's being trapped inside yourself, and it's a
yeah,
hard thing to have. I
yeah.
had a
It's
friend
called,
that had it, and he died from it.
yeah, it's not pretty. And it's called Lou Gehrig's disease. That's another name for it. So she's 40. She's somewhere around there. And so the deal is, I always look for the stressor. So I asked what happened a few years before you had this diagnosis, where you started noticing these symptoms. She said, my 2.5-year-old passed away from febrile seizures. So that's when a child has a temperature so high they go into seizures and then they pass away. So her daughter passed away 7 years ago, and that's about a year or two after that she started noticing these symptoms and finally got diagnosed as ALS. And I'm going to tell you, it's not uncommon with women that they have a stressor like that, but almost always it shows up as breast cancer. It's always if a woman has some kind of trauma, breast cancer is the most likely way her body is going to express it. And I was wondering, why did she have a neurological issue? So I kind of said, maybe it's because the febrile seizures is neurological and ALS is neurological. Maybe that's how she's staying connected to her daughter. All right. So I brought that up to her. I said, I told her the exact same thing. I said, usually when something like this happens, a patient has breast cancer. I realize that stress can cause illness or disease. And I said, I think it's a way of being connected to your daughter because what set me off is that her husband had a tattoo on his calf. And I said, what is that? He said, that's how I stay connected to my daughter with that image. And I'm like, that's her connect. So I brought that up to her and she started crying. And she said, you're exactly right. And because her daughter died and she was pregnant at that time, she never got to grieve. She had another child, and the next child also suffers from these febrile seizures. So she's constantly stressed. She's constantly stressed about this. And so we actually, because my wife is a psychiatrist, to try and unlock that, we use something to I won't even say it because like I said, I know we use something to help them unlock those inner feelings. And so we found out she was angry. She never got to grieve. And it allowed her to grieve and to get all that anger out. And she came out of the session laughing. And so I just want to show you how your mind can get into your body and create disharmony. And when there's disharmony, that just opens up the floodgates for all kinds of diseases and conditions. So we're going to explore that more and more. And this is cold, rock hard science. The problem is with me, I want to see the proof. And now we have the ability to measure this. And so this is cold, rock hard science. So we're going to try and and connect science and spirituality. And because of my upbringing, this is what I've always wanted is to be able to understand scientifically what my father believed in and what was hypnotized and imprinted into my subconscious. I want to understand it scientifically and measure it and balance it and make sure that I'm in the right balance between spirituality and science. So I know we're running out of time. Is there any other questions? And I hope you put your comments down there because I don't want to I just don't want to spill out a lot of information that you're not interested in. I want to know what you're interested in, and I'll try and help clarify, any questions or as much as possible. So, anything else,
Yes,
Rebel? That
we have a
hmm
lot of questions that we
Oh
aren't
boy.
gonna be able to get to because we have
Okay.
2 minutes left, but
Okay.
let me see if I can pick out a easier one.
Okay.
Um, Here you go.
hmm
Well, it might not be easy, but we'll try. And for everyone that we didn't answer your questions, please tune in again next week so we can
Yeah.
get to your questions. I will give Dr. Taylor all of your questions. But for the last question today, um, are ho are hormone levels different as you go through the day? You were talking about the saliva tests with this one.
Yeah. That's what I was taught, and saying that's why we don't do blood levels because they change throughout the day. What we do is we collect 4 samples throughout the day and they pool it together, and there's not that much fluctuation. It really isn't. I've been doing saliva testing for 25 years now, and I'm going to tell you, it has been the most accurate clinical information that I've ever had. It doesn't change that much. That's the excuses doctors will say when a patient asks, "Why don't you test my hormones?" They will come up with that excuse because in the back of their mind, they know that that blood test doesn't really show them anything. So that is a fallacy. And believe me, I really want people to understand saliva testing because that's the first step. You have to get in balance Then we can talk about getting your mind and your spirit in harmony, and then we can move to peace. So, and in our school group, we're going to start out with balance, and then we're going to move into these higher levels because I think you have to have that foundation, and then we can move into the more advanced kind of ways to transform your life. So that's it. I know we're out of time now, aren't we?
We are. We do have
Oh,
to wrap up.
okay, so I'm so happy that that you guys are sending in the questions. Please, if you, I hope she'll send them to me, and I'll kind of make sure I try and answer those in next week. But I always want to end with faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. And I want you to always think and come from a place of love, whatever you do or whatever you say. All right, so I think that's it for me, and thank you so much for bearing with me on this first podcast.
Thanks for joining Dr. Taylor today. If you missed any part of this show, just check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Ageless Blueprint is every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. Together, we discover the ancient secrets to better health through science and spirituality made for modern times. Until then, feel free to check out agelessblueprintpodcast.com and taylormdformulations.com for more information.